So, it's been a whole day. I wanted to give myself some time to think about this some more, listen to it a little bit more, and just kind of come to just a more concrete conclusion of what I think my thoughts are for this album. And I gotta tell you, I like this one. I like this one. I think they've really done something very unique and different with this album for sure. I definitely hear a lot of elements from other Paramore albums, especially Brand New Eyes and After Laughter. Those two albums in particular, I hear a lot of sounds from those albums on here. But in general, this is very different from anything else we've heard from Paramore. You know, traditionally, Paramore is either extremely sparkly pop kind of production or like, you know, pop punk, very angsty and punchy production, but this one is extremely vintage and lush, very, very different from anything we've heard before. Not to mention the variety of sounds and instruments that are on this album that we've never heard before. I mean, there's some very strange guitar tones on here, there's woodwinds, there's flutes. I don't think we've ever heard anything like that on a Paramore record before. This is a weird one, but I'm really into this, like, strange vintage vibe that they've got going on. Overall, I feel like the themes of this album are very much like trauma, like generational societal trauma that we've all kind of felt over the past 3 years, over the past 6 or 7 years. Just a constant barrage of tragedies, never really getting a chance to move on from one before the next one hits. And you know, that stuff really builds up. And this album definitely kind of dives into those feelings and talks about a lot of those things that we all feel but we don't want to admit and say out loud. It's really, really interesting, and I really enjoy Haley's exploration of those topics. It also feels like very much an examination of like self-destructive tendencies and a lot of self-reflection and examination on Haley's part, especially on songs like C'est Comme Ça and Thick Skull and Figure 8. It just feels very honest and open. You know, Haley's admitting a lot of these things are faults that she recognizes, and that in some cases that she's working on, and in others that she's just learning to accept as a part of who she is. It's really, really an interesting exploration of these deep topics, which very much feels like an extension of her solo records. And this album is very influenced by those solo records, just in terms of tone, the lyrics, the production. It reminds me a lot of those records, and they're very, very good. Extremely different from Paramore in general, but just much less energetic. And we get a lot of that on this album, a lot of like toned down, thoughtful songs that are kind of mid-tempo, but very lush and beautiful at the same time. A lot of that lushness that I mentioned comes from the guitars. There's a lot of crazy guitar tones on here, a lot of like delay and reverb and like weird little chorus effects. I would love to see what they're working with in terms of effects and stomp boxes and stuff like that. The guitar nerd in me just wants to geek out and like totally dive into all that kind of stuff. I would love to see a breakdown of his guitar rig. The drums on this record are also really, really good. I feel like they're very groovy and very technical as well. Some of these drum fills are so precise and so tight, and he really knows how to add little accents without overpowering the songs. Very, very good drumming on this record. And Haley's vocals honestly sound as good as they've ever sounded. I think her voice is just so good. She is one of the best, if not the best, front person in the entire scene, in my opinion. I do feel, though, that she was like a little bit restraining herself on this album. I know that she can hit those high notes and sing those really belty parts and stuff still. And I just kind of miss a little bit of that fieriness from her voice, just from some of the older records. I just feel like some of that power has been kind of left behind for experimentation and other different vocal techniques. And I don't really think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's kind of a personal preference for me. You know, she's experimenting a lot with like spoken word and just kind of like flipping back and forth between different registers very quickly. It's very technical and very impressive. But I think for me it lacks a little bit of the punch and the bite of some of those older Paramore records. And I think in general that's one of my tiny issues with this album, is that You know, going back to listen to Brand New Eyes, which is my favorite Paramore record, it just has this ferocity and this angriness and this power that this album doesn't really have. But that's totally fine. This album trades that for like danceability. This album is like a dance party for depressed people. It's a lot of fun, honestly. I was just listening to it again as I was cleaning the house, and it's just a groovy, good time, and I really enjoy this record. I do think I would have liked maybe one more kind of like dance banger or something a little more high energy towards the end of the record. I think that would have been really nice. Right in the very last couple stretches, we got a couple songs that all kind of ramped down in energy, and it would have been nice to throw one more kind of like crazy, danceable, you know, something weird and fun and loud at the end. Overall, I really enjoyed this record. It's definitely going to be up there in terms of their discography. This is really tough. You know, in my reviews, I'm trying to be better about not just giving the things that I enjoy and I like a 10 out of 10 right out the gate. I'm trying to be better about thinking over these things and just kind of contemplating and really kind of like thinking like, okay, are there actually things that I would change? Are there things that they could do better and improve on? And I'm also trying to like temper my own expectations too, because I went into this album with a ton of expectations and hopes that, you know, maybe we would get another kind of emo record, and of course that's not what we got. But what we did get is really special and different, and I did enjoy it. It just like, sometimes I need some time to just like temper my own feelings about this album that I had going into it. All that being said, I really did enjoy this album. I think I'm going to give it an 8.7, which is very good. I'm honestly trying to pull back my scores a little bit because I was just kind of handing out 10s willy-nilly, and that's just because I just wasn't giving myself enough time to think about these albums and marinate with them. Maybe I'll go back and re-rate some of the albums I've rated before someday. But I think this is a solid album. It just didn't quite like explode my brain or push the boundaries of you know, the genre or anything like that. It's just a really solid Paramore album that is very experimental and tries a lot of things that they haven't done before. Let me know what you guys thought of this record in the comments down below. I would love to hear your ratings and your thoughts about This Is Why in the comments. And if you like this video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. That's going to do it for me today. I'll see you in the next one.